The dying were brought to Isahaya. Kazuo Ujihara's Rescue Hibakusha Experience. It has now been 79 years since the end of the war. Today, I would like to speak about what still remains in my memory. Everyone, have you heard the term Rescue Hibakusha? Rescue Hibakusha refers to people who, while transporting or tending to those affected by the atomic bomb, were themselves exposed to radiation. Kazuo Ujihara was born on April 5, 1930, in Uwagumi Oe Village, Kitataki District. When the atomic bomb was dropped, he helped carry the wounded from the trains to the platform at Isahaya Station. As a result, he became a rescue hibakusha. When I was 15 years old and in my third year of junior high school, I worked at Isahaya Station as part of the student labor mobilization program. I had heard that when men turned 20, they were required to undergo a conscription examination, and those who were deemed fit were all sent off to the battlefield as soldiers. With so many men gone, there was a shortage of workers, especially among the elderly and women. So we students stopped going to school and were made to work. At Isahaya Station, about 10 male and female students worked together. The boys worked outdoors, rearranging freight trains, while the girls collected passenger tickets and performed other related tasks. At the time, most of the trains were for freight, with only a few passenger trains in operation. These freight trains, consisting of 20 to 30 cars, were loaded with weapons, ammunition, food supplies for soldiers, and other wartime necessities. From around the time the U.S. military occupied mainland Okinawa, air raid warnings blared day and night over the radio, accompanied by sirens. B-29 heavy bombers began to carry out air raids on military factories in Nagasaki, Sasebo, Isahaya, Omura, and Omuta, the southernmost city in Fukuoka Prefecture. One night, while I was on duty, a fighter plane, most likely a Grumman, attacked Isahaya Station with a roaring pop, 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 pop. I fled in a panic, crawling under a freight train to hide. But there were 4 or 5 station employees who were not quick enough to escape and suffered injuries to their ankles and thighs. At night, the station was lit with signal lights and other lamps, which seemed to make it a target for attacks. That day, August 9th, 1945, was a clear, extremely humid day. As usual, I was working outdoors, switching train cars, when suddenly a blinding flash of light dazzled my eyes and left me dazed. A moment later, there was a tremendous bang, boom, that echoed all around. What was that? What's happening? What's going on? We were engulfed in a strange and eerie atmosphere, like nothing I had ever experienced before. Looking westward toward Nagasaki, I saw a massive cloud rising and spreading across the sky. Though it was still midday, the area in the direction of Nagasaki looked as dim as evening. Before long, someone shouted, "This is terrible! The same kind of new bomb that hit Hiroshima has been dropped on Nagasaki. Chaos broke out at the station. At exactly 11:02 a.m., the atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Before long, we received information and instructions from the station headquarters. A bomb has been dropped on the Urakami Nagasaki area, which is now in a state of total destruction. Trains can no longer operate beyond Michino Station. The train schedule will be revised, and trains will be operated as rescue trains to transport the many wounded. In response, members of the local Civil Defense Corps, Fire Brigade, Women's Association, and Youth Group gathered at Isahaya Station. They brought with them handcarts, stretchers, wooden boards, and other tools to help transport the injured to nearby locations, such as the Naval Hospital, now Isahaya General Hospital, public halls, and school gymnasiums. They stood by, ready to help. When the first train arrived and I stepped inside, I was stunned by the sight before me. Clothing was burned and torn apart. People's bodies were covered in burns. Some had their skin peeling off. Others had sagging skin from severe blistering. Hair was singed and frizzy. Clothes were charred. And many victims were in such a condition that you couldn't tell whether they were male or female, or how old they were. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen anything like it. I was struck speechless by shock and fear. My mind went completely blank. It hurts. It hurts. So hot. So hot. Water. Give me water. The moans of the injured overlapped one another. It truly felt like a living hell. We were told very firmly, absolutely do not give them water. If you do, they will die. Later, I learned the reason. Their throats and windpipes had been burned, and if they drank water, it would cause blistering, swelling the throat and airway, and leading to suffocation. The wounded were laid on top of blankets, straw mats, or clothing. Since we were familiar with handling trains, we took on the task of entering the train as it arrived and carrying the wounded from the cars down onto the platform. We had to get them emergency care as quickly as possible. We worked with all our might to carry them from the train to the platform. All the passengers were severely injured. None of them could walk. Some had already passed away inside the train, while others died shortly after being brought onto the platform. When we touched their bodies, their skin would peel away with a slick, slipping sensation, making it impossible to touch them directly. We carried them out in pairs, each of us holding a corner of the mat or blanket beneath them. That day, the rescue efforts continued late into the night, and on into the next day and the day after that. It was a constant shuttle of transportation. While the relief trains were en route to Nagasaki, we transported the wounded, who had been offloaded onto the platform, to hospitals and other facilities. Without a moment's rest, we moved about frantically, entirely absorbed in the work. Wounded were also sent to Omura Station and Nagata Station. Eventually, the facilities around Isahaya Station could no longer accommodate everyone. I have no idea how many injured people were brought to Isahaya Station in total. After the war ended, I grew up from a junior high school student into an adult and eventually got married. I was blessed with 1 daughter and 3 sons. My youngest, the 3rd son, was energetic, had a big appetite, and was a sturdy, healthy child. He would do impressions of popular singers in front of others, or perform the dojo sukui dance for laughs. He was cheerful and a real clown. Our home was always filled with laughter. He also did well in school and used to say, "When I grow up, I want to be a doctor." However, in the spring of 1973, when he was 7 years old, my youngest son fell ill. After undergoing tests at the hospital, he was admitted. 10 days later, the doctor diagnosed him with leukemia. We were told that, with the medical knowledge available at the time, there was no treatment, and that he had only 3 months left to live. At that time, the doctor asked, "Have either you or your wife been exposed to the atomic bomb?" I explained that I had assisted in rescuing the injured immediately after the bombing. The doctor said, "It's likely that your indirect exposure to radiation may be connected to your child's leukemia." My son became ill because of me. Despite all our efforts, on the morning of September 1st, 1973, my 3rd son, Hiromichi, passed away at the age of 7. Hiromichi, I'm so sorry. Even now, my feelings for my young son, who died so early, have never left me. After the war, I never spoke to anyone about that hellish experience. There was a strong stigma. People believed that those who had been exposed to the atomic bomb would suffer physical effects, and so no one would marry someone who had experienced the bombings, or no one should marry someone who had been exposed. But after my son's death, I became convinced. The damage caused by the atomic bomb affects even the next generation. Something like this must never happen again. After that, I applied for a hibakusha certificate and was officially recognized as a rescue hibakusha. Since then, I've begun sharing my story during peace education programs at school, speaking about the horrors of war, the abolition of nuclear weapons, and the preciousness of life. I strongly believe we must continue to call for the elimination of nuclear weapons. It feels as though Hiromichi is gently encouraging me, saying, "Dad, do your best so that something like this never happens again." This spring, I visited Salisbury Park for the first time. According to the information recorded there, between 400 and 500 people who died from the atomic bomb were cremated at that site. So many had died that the crematorium could not keep up, and holes were dug in nearby fields where bodies were burned instead. Learning about this historical fact made me once again realize the sheer cruelty of the atomic bomb. When I look back over the 79 years of history since then, the horror of war and the terror of nuclear weapons still cling vividly in my mind. I strongly feel that such a tragic event must never be allowed to happen again. Today, here in Isahaya, the Ariake Sea stretches to the south, the Tara mountain range rises to the north, and the Honmyo River flows through the center. Flowers bloom with the changing seasons, and the gentle greenery of the trees is beautiful. We are blessed with rich natural surroundings. The Isahaya Station, where I once worked as a student laborer, has also been transformed. The Shinkansen now runs through it, and it has been beautifully rebuilt. It's hard to even imagine that hellish scene now. We are living peacefully in this calm and gentle environment. 79 years ago, a single bomb killed and wounded countless people and destroyed nature and buildings alike. Ever since then, people have lived with fear, sorrow, anger, and anxiety. Even now, the damage caused by the atomic bomb has not come to an end. That is why atomic bombs must never be used again. War must never be waged again. This message must continue to be passed down forever. After hearing about my experience as a rescue hibakusha, members of the second generation Atomic Bomb Survivors Association undertook the creation of this kamishibai. I am grateful if this kamishibai can serve as a starting point for those who have never experienced war, so that they are never caught up in it, and so that the call for the abolition of nuclear weapons can be carried forward to future generations.